Hey everybody, welcome to St. Stephen's Online. We hope you enjoy catching up on our talk from Sunday.
So in a moment, I'm going to speak about Psalm 63, which Alison read for us, so you might want to have that just on your phone, or you might even have an old school Bible. Well done if you have. But I'm just going to do a little bit of scene setting first. And as we approach the summer holidays, I want to talk about the summer and spiritual health. Now, I recognise that not everybody will be going on holiday over the next few weeks, but some of us will. And even if you don't have plans to go away, the whole of church life changes a little bit over the summer. It gets a bit quieter. We go from 3 services down to 2. I saw this image recently on social media that was taken from a tube station. It says this: "I'm doing my best to not get stressed, but I must confess, my body, mind, and soul all need a rest." If you're anything like me, at the end of an academic year, you might feel that your body's a bit tired and your mind is a bit fried and you need a bit of a rest. I've heard it a lot through July. I've said it myself, that people say at this time of year, don't they? Like, I can't wait for August. I'm hanging on for the summer holidays. I really need a break. But I think this person has got it bang on, that yes, our bodies and our minds need a rest, but we are holistic beings, mind, body, and soul. And our souls also need a rest. In the same way that we think about our physical and our mental health and taking a rest, so we also need to think about our souls. How do our souls rest over this holiday season? But let's start with a little question about Jesus. Did Jesus ever take a holiday? Did Jesus ever take a holiday? Well, not as far as I can see in the ways that we would define a holiday. When I read the Gospels, there's no reference to Jesus packing up his tent, getting his flip-flops and his sun cream out. But what he did do quite clearly is that sometimes he stepped away from his ordinary life, particularly when he was tired or when his life was difficult. Look at this example from Matthew 14. In this instance, Jesus' cousin, John the Baptist, had just been killed. Really difficult time for Jesus. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. He stepped away from the ordinary, had some rest. Again, in Mark 16, this is a moment when Jesus' ministry is really quite overwhelming. Look what it says. Then, because so many people were coming and going, they didn't even have a chance to eat, the disciples. He said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. Jesus took a break from his regular routine. And what you notice is that when he did this, he didn't just attend to his physical and mental health by eating nice food and going for a walk along the beach. He attended to his soul, to his spiritual health. He spent time with God. One of my favorite children's books is this one, Jesus' Day Off. And what happens in this little book is that Jesus is working really hard. Until it says one day Jesus woke up and he was exhausted and couldn't get himself out of bed. So his friends say, "Well, why don't you go to the doctor?" So Jesus goes to the doctor and says, "I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm really exhausted." And the doctor says, Jesus, take the day off. Relax, enjoy yourself, go and sit in the sun. So Jesus skips off on his little mini day off. And in the book, the first thing he does is he does cartwheels across the desert. Then he played catch with his halo. I don't know that Jesus had a halo. In this book he has. Then he had a picnic. Then he went for a nice, refreshing swim. And finally, he went on a long donkey ride because Jesus liked riding donkeys. He's had a wonderful day and he's feeling quite rested, but then it says this: at the end of the day, he still felt a little bit sad. And he realized that the reason he was sad is that he'd done all these fun and enjoyable things, but he hadn't spent time with his dad. He hadn't spent time with God the Father. He hadn't attended to his soul. And so what happens at the end of the book is that Jesus climbs the mountain and spends time with God. He tends to his soul by spending time with the Father. Let's consider for a moment the way in which we think about taking a break. With our physical and mental health, it's often about doing less and getting away from the stuff that we ordinarily do. We use the language of unplug, relax, switch off. And I want to say today the opposite is true when it comes to our spiritual health. Holidays are not for unplugging or relaxing or switching off from God. For our souls to rest, we actually need to do the opposite. We're not getting away from God like we're getting away from it all. We need more of him if our souls are to rest. We need to plug in, reset, switch on to his presence. Summer soul care is all about getting more of God's presence and goodness. And I'd like to turn to Psalm 63, our reading for today, and just walk us through 3 simple ways in which we then might approach a summer break. David, who wrote this psalm, is a king facing all sorts of challenges: war, responsibilities, choices, disappointments. But in this particular moment of the psalm, he steps away into the wilderness, which is a solitary place. Not quite a holiday, but like Jesus, he steps away. Let's see what this psalm can teach us about David's approach. Firstly, I think it suggests that we need to raise our expectancy. What are your expectations about your spiritual health over the summer break? What do you expect will happen to your soul, or have you even thought about it? David begins by looking back and he recalls what God has done. Verse 2, I have seen you, Lord, in the sanctuary and beheld your power and glory. And then with that in his mind, he looks forward expectantly as to what God will do in this time. Verse 5, I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. When I go on holiday, I expect to eat really good food. We're going to France for a holiday for a couple of weeks, and I will eat lots of food. Pastries, cheese, drink quite a lot of wine. It's probably the only 2 weeks in the whole year where I can justify having an ice cream every day and a glass of wine or 2 every day. I expect to be fully satisfied with good food when I am on holiday. David expects the same about spending time with God. I will be fully satisfied in my soul, he writes. Our spiritual expectations for our summer break need to be that we will be full with all that God has for us. Because when your body and mind are most at rest, chances are that God will speak to your soul in that place more than in any other time because you are less distracted. David encourages us to raise our expectancy for this season of rest. Secondly, the psalm, I think, teaches us to acknowledge our agency. Whenever I read the Psalms, I get the impression that David is a kind of front foot sort of person. He steps into opportunities. He models that, yes, God, you are God, but that he also has human agency and the ability to make choices. David is not passive. We have agency on holiday as much as we have agency in regular life. Consider the aspects of your health and the choices that you might make over the summer. So every day on my holiday, I will not look at my social media for my mental health, to give myself just a little bit of a break. Every day on my holiday, I will go for a swim, hopefully, if the weather allows, in order to just feel physically well. Every day on my holiday, what will I do for my spiritual health? What will you do every day on your holiday to attend to your spiritual health? David actively does the following. He prays, the first verse of the psalm, God, I earnestly seek you in this time. And then he spends time blessing and worshiping God. It says in the psalm, he does it day and night. He's not passive. What would that look like on a holiday for you and me? Might we, at the same time that we write a packing list of all the things that we want to take with us in our suitcase, also write a list of all the people and things that we want to pray for over our holiday? Might we ask a Christian friend for a book recommendation, or pop into the prayer chapel and take one of the many books to borrow off the shelves over the summer holidays? Might you subscribe to the new St. Stephen's Talks podcast, catch up on missed talks, listen again? Might you look up talks from other churches or some faith podcasts to fill your soul? My 3 top podcast recommendations would be John Mark Comer, Danielle Strickland, or Mark Sayers. Search for them. Fill up your soul with what these wise people have got to say. We have incredible agency as to how we might spend our time and invest in our spiritual health. Now, I understand, little caveat, that if you are a parent or carer of small children, I recognize holidays are different. Someone once said to me that with small children, the whole definition of a holiday changes. It's not a holiday anymore, it's just your life in a different place. So I understand that that is harder. However, might there be, even if you have small children, just a little moment in your holiday where you go, this is the moment for my spiritual health and time with God. I'm going to put it in there that I'm going to have a little prayer walk, or I will just listen to one talk, something to feed your soul. Thirdly, I think David teaches us that when we step away, we have an opportunity to deepen our dependency on God. If you're anything like me, perhaps you like busyness and work because it makes us feel needed. Actually, activity feeds our egos. But on holiday, there's less responsibility. People are less dependent on us. There's less emails and calls that we have to respond to. And it's an opportunity, therefore, to reset our dependency on God. David writes it like this. He says, God, I cling to you. The Hebrew means I join to you. David uses the same verb here in his psalm as is used elsewhere in the Old Testament to describe marriage. When a man leaves his parents and joins with his wife and they become one flesh. David uses the same verb to describe his closeness to God as is used to describe the intimacy of sex. David is saying, God, in this time I draw close to you. I cling to you. It might seem for us a bit of an inappropriate comparison to make, but whilst God is mighty and powerful, he is also tender and close. As a teenager, I followed a band called Delirious. And one of the lyrics to their songs was this: sometimes, God, you are closer than my skin. And I remember listening to that song as a teenager being like, that's just weird. That's just weird. How could God be closer than my skin? But as I've got older and walked with the Lord, I've experienced his closeness more, and I'm hungry for more of it. God, I cling to you. Paul writes in Philippians, the Lord is near. He doesn't say the Lord is there. He says the Lord is near. David teaches us to deepen our dependency on him. When we step away, it's a perfect opportunity to do this. Lord, I cling to you. Finally, let's be honest. If we do take a holiday or a break in some way, Whilst we might step away from whatever challenges we're facing, those challenges will still remain here when we get back. I'm going to France for a couple of weeks, but the things that feel hard about my life and the things that are worrying me will still be here when I get back. David is writing in the wilderness, but he has to go back to face the battle. He talks at the end of the psalm about liars and enemies. You might not feel that you have liars or enemies around you, though you might, but you probably have some issues and complexities in your life that you have to deal with. David's assignment is not easy, and it might be that yours is not easy too. And so a holiday, a break, is a good opportunity to restate utter dependency on God. To say, God, before I head back to the things that I need to deal with, I draw close. I cling to you. So, if you want to look after your spiritual health as well as your physical and mental health this summer, don't be unplugging from God. Plug into him. Jesus' soul was renewed by spending time with God. David's soul was renewed by drawing close to God. This season is an opportunity to raise our expectancy, acknowledge our agency, and deepen our dependency on God.
Thanks for listening. We hope you found that encouraging. Have a great week and see you soon.